Hello. Yeah, hi guys. Welcome to this live session by Great Learning. My name is Ram and I'll be the host for today's live session, guys. Alright, so guys, this is what we're going to be doing in today's live session. So basically, I'll be helping you set up your WordPress website with the help of Docker. So we'll be doing it locally for the purposes of, keeping it in the time frame for today, okay? So locally, when I mean locally, I won't be doing it on my own system. We will be doing it on AWS launched virtual machine. So, you have that going for you. All right, so before we do begin this session, I would like to have a confirmation from you guys that you guys can hear me properly and that you guys can see me properly. Also, let me just check my settings. All right, so the sound's all right. And while you guys give me the confirmation, it's going to be a bit of a lag till I receive a confirmation. Let me just show you guys. All right, so Great Learning has come up with something really awesome. It's called Great Learning Academy, and it's completely free. Now, what do I mean by Great Learning Academy, and why am I saying it's free? So, Great Learning Academy is an initiative Great Learning has started because of this COVID situation we have been going on, the pandemic situation we are in, where, everyone's been stuck at home, we aren't able to meet each other, and a lot of people are losing jobs, and that's because the economy is going down. And that's really depressing. But the thing is, we have come up with this Gradling Academy to help people like that, and all those freshers who are not able to find job, or people who just want to upskill, right? Not just them, it's for everyone. So for all of you guys, we started making these courses. So these courses, range from a lot of different topics, from your data science to machine learning to AI to IT and software, you full stack development. All of these courses are there to help you out, upskill yourself. And guys, all of these courses are completely free. That means you don't have to pay anything. And that's the best part about it. Since you don't have to pay anything, that means that you can get into it without any constraints. And once you get into it without any constraints, you just go ahead, learn the thing, and finish the quiz. And once you complete the course, you will get a certificate, and that certificate will give you credibility whenever you're looking for a job, and it will form a good fundamental base for yourself from which you can jump on to other advanced topics for similar domains. So if you want to, let's say, study IT and software, you can check out our full stack course on it. It will help you out. You can see it's 8-hour course. It will help you out understand all the different parts of full stack development. And once you complete the quiz, you will get a certification for it. And with that, you can go ahead and form a better base for yourself, do more projects, learn more, and then apply for a job, and then you get the job. So it's as simple as that, and it's as easy in the matter of fact that you don't have to pay for anything. So feel free to check out Great Learning Academy. You can type this in Google, or you can just go to greatlearning.in/academy from the website itself. Also, if you guys want, you can do it on your mobile also. I know a lot of our viewers are mobile users primarily, so you can just go to Play Store, iOS Store, and download the Great Learning app from there and do the same thing. It's as easy as it is over here, even over there. All right. Okay, so now let me just check the confirmation. Let me open up YouTube. All right, so yeah, we have a lot of people over here. We have Aditya saying hi. Yeah. So we have Jay, we have Tulsi, Bhargav, we have NJ. So all of these people are over here. Now, I want a confirmation. You guys really haven't given me any confirmation over here that you guys can hear me and you can see my screen properly. I would dearly love that, because I don't want to proceed without, uh, making sure that everything is running fine. Just say a yes or no. Also, guys, try to keep the chat interactive. It's always fun to have people talk to each other and talk to me also. Feel free to ask any questions you want. Hey, we have Avinash saying, hello, sir. Well, hello, Avinash. I hope you enjoy this session. We have Ashik also coming in, Sanjeev also coming in saying hi. So we have a lot of different people coming in saying hi. That's really cool. And finally, I get my confirmation. Yes, we can hear you. All right. So that's great. I get my confirmation. Now I can proceed. So I hope you guys got the idea about Great Lane Academy. So do feel free to, go there, check out all the courses, check for whatever you like. Maybe you're not into IT, maybe you're into data science, or maybe you're into digital marketing, right? And you're watching this session just for the sake of it. Just search your course over here and you will find it. All right. Okay, with that out of the way, guys, I will begin this session. So, to begin this session, I need to know something from you. Do you guys know about Docker? All right, how many of you know about Docker? If you know about Docker, tell me in the chat. Let me know in the chat that yes, I know about Docker, I've used Docker, or tell me that you don't know Docker and this is something new for you, but you have an idea of what WordPress is. So we have a few people who do know about Docker. Avinash says this, yes, I know about Docker. And other people do, are coming in. Know some basics, yes, a little. And someone said container, Keshav. I suppose you know a lot about containers then. But we do have some people saying that they don't know, about Docker. Like Ravi saying, I don't know about Docker. Shahrukh is saying, don't know about Docker. That's all right. We always learn new things. Okay, some people saying they do know. Like Ravi said, he doesn't know Docker, but he does know WordPress. Yeah, Keshav is kind of right. WordPress is used for creating websites, using a lot of different plugins. So for those who don't know what WordPress is a content management platform. It allows us to basically manage our content. But the thing is that you can use it as a base for creating blogs and websites also, and that way it gives us the flexibility to diversify whatever we want to do. If you want to get into digital marketing, you want to promote your brand, your company, then you set up WordPress websites with it. It's very easy to do so. You just have to buy a domain name and then get some platform on which you can launch it, and just launch your website. It's as easy as that. You don't have to worry about learning the front end, how to write the front end, how to write the back end, how to know about the middleware, how the networking is going to work, and what kind of API should I be writing for this, etc., etc. You don't have to know all of that. You just need to know that you're going to be setting up a WordPress website with its associated database. And now we're talking about WordPress setup with Docker, right? So how does Docker come into this picture? So that is an important question, and I will answer that before I begin, because then it will be a lot more clear for you guys. So see, WordPress generally, like I said, is used for launching websites, having blogs, and all those things, right? So what does Docker do? What is Docker's role in this? So Docker basically allows us to do the same thing. It allows us to deploy, it basically allows us to set up WordPress website. How does it do it? It does so with the help of something called containerization. Now containerization is a very, very interesting thing. It's been getting implemented, and it's become very trendy in today's software development market, because people are shifting away from the older deployment methodologies. Now when I say deployment methodologies, I mean giving the software. What does deployment over here mean? So do you guys know what am I talking about when I say deployment? So Sanjeev knows both WordPress and Docker. That's good. Yeah. So like Shabi says, like without using HTML, and we can create a website by using drag and drop with WordPress. So Arjun asks, how's WordPress different from HTML? Well, I cannot go into the basics about it, but HTML is your front end formatting language that you use to create your front end. Whereas WordPress, like I will show you, it's the whole platform itself. It allows you to publish, post articles, drag and drop a lot of different things, right? Okay, so a lot of people saying they do know what deployment is. So deploying something is basically giving something. So if you are deploying your WordPress website, you are giving it to some location. Like if you're deploying it to the production environment, you are basically giving it to the end users. Production environment is basically where your final product is there. Now I'm using a lingo that is for software development. It's not necessarily aligned with digital marketing and everything, but it give you a little better idea. So you deploy your software, and that means you put it somewhere or you make it functional somewhere. So if I deploy my WordPress website, I'm basically making my WordPress website functional so that other people can come and use it. Or if not a live website, I'm making it so that it's available on my own system. So that's what we will be doing today. So we will be deploying a WordPress, or we will be setting up WordPress within our own system with the help of Docker. Now, Docker, what is it? How will it help us do all of this? To get a better idea of that, I know a lot of you people do know Docker, but please be a little patient. There are a lot of people who don't know Docker, so I will go into a little bit detail about what Docker is and how it will help us out, and then we will go ahead and set up our WordPress website. Okay. All right. So NJ asks, sir, can you make a sample website for us and make it easy for us? Okay, well, let's see how the session goes, because how I plan the session is basically I'll be explaining to you the concepts of Docker, and then we'll be launching a virtual machine where we will be launching a WordPress. We'll be launching WordPress with the help of Docker. All right. So making the website itself is maybe not within the scope of this session, but if I can get to it, I will get to it in this session. And if I can't, what I will do is I will basically make another session where I will help you guys out with WordPress. And also, guys, one thing to remember for you guys, if you have any recommendations for videos, or if you have any requests for videos, feel free to leave them in the chat or leave them in the comment sections after this session has been published as a video, or any other video for your request for whatever you want, so that we get to know what our audience wants. Now, we won't always know it, so feel free to let us know also. All right, so with that out of the way, now we'll move on and start talking about Docker. But before that, someone said something in the chat. So Minu is like, can you introduce Docker? Yes, I will definitely do that. I'm going to do that. Shalby, I do subscribe and suggest because it's a great platform for beginners. Well, yeah, that's really good. And thank you for the praise. All right, so now we'll begin. So in software development, right? Software development is a very intricate process. It has many different moving parts to it. So within the software development process, we have to come up with pipelines to make software, because if you think about making software, it's not just writing the code and executing the code and that's it. That's not how software is developed, at least in the in the industry. You have a lot of different processes that you have to do before you even think about deploying your software. So let me show you guys a standard development pipeline. So this is a standard delivery pipeline or development pipeline where you're developing the software. So we have a developer. The developer develops this software, and he doesn't develop the software exactly. He develops the code. That means he writes the code, or the syntax and whatever he needs to write. All of the code, like the functions and the features that he has to write, and he writes that code. And once he's satisfied, or whenever someone's satisfied with his work, he will basically send it for the building process. Now, what is building process over here? So when you finish writing a code, it needs to be turned into an executable. Even when you're using an integrated development environment for working with any kind of code, you will always see that there's an option, say run, compile the code, or build and run the code. So that building process is basically taking code and making it into an executable. So that's how it always happens. Your code doesn't get directly executed. There's a whole process behind it. And there are different kinds of compilers that do different kinds of things. But in simple terms, when you're building your code, you're taking your code with all of its dependencies. In this case, dependencies can be external libraries that you use to make functions, or they can be functions themselves. And they all get combined together to form a single executable file. This executable file can be any, it can be like that normal executable file you guys have on Windows. So let's say that you have, a game or any application. You always see that it's shortcut to launch it. It's always a .exe file. So that is the executable. That is the software. Your code is not the software. Your code is a part of the software. The software is going to be the code, the dependencies, the tools that are required to run it all together. So that is your building process where you build your code into an executable. Now, once it's been made into an executable, it becomes the software that it needs to be. Now, after that, then the testing process comes in where you test the software out rigorously. You test it for every small thing and you make sure that the test coverage is 100%. That means you're testing everything, and you test it for various things like integration testing, where you check out if it's working fine with other components of software or not. You check it out for acceptance testing, where you're checking if the software is up to the mark and it fulfills all the requirements or not. These requirements are something that was decided by the stakeholders, that we want this in the product, and the tester checks that these things are there in the product or not. And all of those kind of different things are being tested. You do dynamic testing also. So that's why you need an executable. So once the testing has been completed, we get a result. If something is wrong with the code, then the developer gets notified. The developer writes the code again with rectifying his mistake and sends it for the building process again. But if the code is fine, it goes ahead for deployment, where basically it's available to the end users. So this is a standard delivery pipeline. Now, why do we talk about containerization over here? So the thing is that this is totally fine, but the thing is, in the past they had a lot of different issues. What this issue can be is one of the issues that can be is compatibility. So with developer and tester, right? They both have their own systems, their own laptops, and they work on different separate environments. When I say environment, I mean like softwares that they're using, the operating system they're using. So if they're using different environments, then there are issues that can come up with compatibility wise. So let's say that developer and tester are there and they have different environments. The developer has a certain operating system. He has PyTest, but he has the version 5.4.3. He's using a different integrated development environment than the tester, but they're both working on the same Django backend code and the same dependencies. So the only difference here is the PyTest and the IDEs, right? So that itself can cause some problem, because you're using different versions of a particular software, so you don't know how it will react. A lot of times if you use different versions of a software, let's talk about Java 7 and Java 8, you can understand that there are a lot of compatibility issues that happen between different versions, and that can be very headache inducing. So you want to avoid this. To avoid this kind of issue where the different people are working with different environments and that causes our code to not run. So the developer system, the code runs fine, but the tester system, the code does not run fine because of the environment change. To avoid that, we make use of something called containers, and that's where all of this containerization comes in, right? Agent 47 is asking, do you have any advanced course on CSS? So to my knowledge, we do have a course on CSS, and we are coming up with more courses on that specific topic. So, but I do not know the exact date on that. So, subscribe and stay tuned to get a notification about the same. All right, so this is what happens when you introduce containers within your delivery pipeline. You see that this is the standard delivery pipeline, but the difference is that we're using containers over here. Now, what do these containers do? These containers basically act as contained devices. Let me give you guys a better idea. So, do you guys know about radiation, right? And you know how radiation can be very harmful to human bodies. So let's say you have to go in a radiation environment. You have to wear a suit for that. You have to wear a lead suit or whatever suit that allows you to avoid radiation, right? So that is the environment that is radiating the radiation, and you yourself are wearing a suit of sorts that will help you to avoid the radiation hitting your body, and your body is inside of that suit. So you can think of these containers as those suits, where inside of these containers you keep all of your software, you keep you use not software, your code. You keep your code, you keep your dependencies, you keep your environment, you keep your tools that are required. So everything we just saw over here can be put in one container. Instead of having it on the developer's laptop, why don't you just take all of these things and put them into one container? And that container is a self-contained environment. That means it's not interacting with the developer's laptop at all, or the PC, or whatever he's working on. So whatever you want to do to the code, you can do it inside of the container. So it kind of acts like a virtual machine, but a very lightweight one, where you're doing only the things that are required or necessary. So once the developer, he develops the code within the container, he does not send the code ahead for building process. He sends the container ahead. What is the difference in this case? The thing is that when he sends the container, the code gets built inside of the container. So there is no interaction with the outside environment. There is no radiation coming in, metaphorically speaking. There is no compatibility issues happening because the code already has everything it needs to run fine inside of the container. So when it comes on the tester system, it does not care what is there on the tester's environment. It just cares what is inside the container. So it provides a layer of isolation from the host environment. So if there is a layer of isolation, there won't be any compatibility issues. You won't have to worry about what version of PyTest is there on tester system. You just have to worry about what is there in the container. And inside of the container, we have the same PyTest version that we were using before because it's the same container, right? So no more compatibility issues. The code runs fine on both the developers and the tester system, and they can perform their task at hand. That is the main thing they're supposed to be doing, and not worrying about compatibility. That is developing and testing respectively. And once all of this happens, the thing goes ahead to the production environment where it gets deployed, and it basically goes to the end users. So this is how containerization helps us, the issues that we used to face before containerization was a thing. All right. We have a question coming in. Bani is asking, is Docker dead? No, definitely Docker is not dead. It is more popular than ever these days. I wanted to know that does Docker have any future? Yes, it does have a future. It has an amazing future. I mean, a lot of companies are shifting away from the traditional deployment methodology to Docker and orchestration services and cloud, because that is the future. That is much more easier. Instead of having your own on-premise hardware or on-premise server where you're doing everything, you might as well, that takes a lot of effort and maintenance costs and everything. You might as well just shift everything to a cloud service and let them worry about the hardware and everything. And even during deployment, right? So this is where containers also come in. That's a little bit more complicated topic. I will not go into it right now because I know a lot of people, you don't know about what Docker is exactly, right? We'll cover that later. I hope I answered your question satisfactory as it is. All right, so let's discuss what is container. As we've already discussed, it's sort of a box where you keep in all the different parts of your software. Like you keep the code, you keep the libraries, and you keep the environment. All of them together are put inside the container, and that container can be used for a lot of different purposes. And it's very portable. You can move it from different servers and systems within them and to them, right? So that is what a container is. If you guys want a better understanding, just think of containers as virtual machines. But don't think they're this exact same thing. There's a lot of difference between containers and virtual machines. So just think of container as a VM, but not exactly the VM. Okay. The major difference between a container and a virtual machine is, if you want to know, that virtual machines are very heavy. They have everything operating system needs, like the GUI, all the third-party apps and everything. But a container is very lightweight. It will only have the very basic parts of an operating system or the environment that is being used. So let's say the virtual machine, you launch the whole Ubuntu operating system. You see that you can start using it with the mouse, and you have the GUI, and you have a lot of different applications you can do within the virtual machine. But within a container, if you launch Ubuntu, right, you will only have the basic terminal that helps you to access all the different parts, and that's it. So if you compare the images, you get a better idea. Like the image for a container for Ubuntu is like just 73 MB, whereas for virtual machine, it's like 1 GB or 2 GB, the normal images. So I hope that cleared it out. Now, why do we need containers? There are two main reasons why we need containers. The first main reason is that consistent development environments. We've already talked about this. In standard delivery pipelines, you need to make sure that there are no compatibility issues. And to do that, we make use of containers, which are self-contained environments. So if they're self-contained, that means no need to interact with any other environments, right? On a larger scale. So that's why it allows us to have consistent development environments. And one more important thing that I haven't told you guys about is microservices. And this microservices comes into our part today of WordPress deployment also. Why? Because microservices, right? Microservices are basically taking your software and dividing it into small chunks. Let's say you have one big software and you decide to divide it into 5 smaller parts. So these 5 smaller parts will have specific chunks of software. Guys, just give me a minute, huh? I'm getting parched. I'll just grab a glass of water and come back. All right. So microservices is basically a type of implementation of your software. You don't deploy your software as a monolithic thing. That is one software together. You can do that, but it's a very difficult way to. You have to maintain it and everything, right? So that is more difficult. When you talk about microservices, you have everything divided into small parts. So it becomes much easier to manage them in these small parts. All right. So now the containers help us to deploy our software within these small parts. You can take these small chunks of the software and put them into these containers, right? And deploy the container, all of these containers together as a whole. These containers will be connected to each other. So if any of these functionalities have interdependence, they can talk to each other. So there's no issue with that. But it just allows us to increase our manageability within these containers and handle them, upscale them, all those kind of different things. All right. Now we'll move on to what is Docker. But before that, I'll answer the questions there are. Okay, so we have Shahrukh asking, please explain the difference between Docker versus Kubernetes. So the difference is that Docker is a tool that allows us to create containers, whereas Kubernetes is an orchestration service, right? So Docker will basically allow us to create those containers, but when it comes to managing large number of containers together, Docker isn't always the best choice for it. Kubernetes is used as a management tool. It allows us to manage different containers together. So in basic, that's the difference. All right, but there are a lot more different things that you'll get to know when you go into more advanced stuff. So Bunny is asking, company will prefer people who know Docker. That is true. A company, if you're going for a software development role and you tell the company that you do know about Docker, they are more likely. So if you go to a company and you tell you're going for a software development role, and they see that there are two people with the same kind of qualifications, but one guy knows about Docker also. That's a big plus point, because in companies when you're deploying and all that, if you have knowledge about these kind of things, there is no need to train for these kind of things. So that way they'll prefer you if you know Docker. So Keshav also asked the difference, Kubernetes and Docker. I hope I answered that. People are saying my voice is not coming in. Let me just check. All right. There's a lot of disturbance in the background, right? Let me just go ahead and clear that out, and then we'll start. Oh yeah, guys, I'm back. Yeah. So sorry for that disturbance in the background. Hopefully you guys can hear me better. So Bunny is saying, very nice tutorial. Enjoying my video, huh? So that's really cool. You're asking, you want to get a certificate for Docker. So as of right now, we don't have a course for Docker, but I am duly working on it. So if you guys wait a little bit, we will release a tutorial and course on it, and it will be available on Great Learning Academy. So stay subscribed and keep on watching my live sessions. If you ask me a question, maybe next live session, I can give you an update on what's going on. All right. All right. So I hope that made it clear. Now we'll just go through all these different things. Yeah, like the moderator is saying, you can ask moderator also questions about the courses. So Docker is a tool that helps us in developing, building, deploying, and executing software in isolation. So basically, Docker allows us to do all of those processes like developing, building, deploying by helping us to create containers. So you take an application, you put it into a set of Docker containers, and you deploy it. So, that's what Docker allows us to do. But it also provides a layer of security. So that is an important thing. Now, there are a lot of alternatives to Docker also available, but just the thing is, Docker is an industry standard. People love Docker. It's really useful, so they just go for this most cases. All right. Okay, I see a lot of people asking the difference between Kubernetes and Docker. They want to know the explanation. Huh? All right. Here's what. I'll give you guys 5 minutes. Let's see how many more people want Kubernetes versus Docker. If I see like 5 more replies, I will answer this. Okay, because this is out of the concept of a scope of what we are going to be talking today. So Docker installation and setup, right? So first, to work with WordPress, right, we need to install Docker. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to AWS. This is my cloud provider, and I'm going to launch a virtual machine. So these days, right, when you are talking about software development and deployment, specifically deployment, it's kind of a hybrid of virtual machines and containers. You don't do it just with containers. To manage those containers and to have a platform for those containers, you need a virtual machine. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to be launching a virtual machine in AWS. You can call them instances. You launch them using the EC2 service. You guys can do it too. It's completely free. First year, just click on launch instance. Okay, so we do have a lot of people coming in and asking. Hi, Suryansh. Okay. Okay. So Docker versus Kubernetes. So the thing with Docker is it is used to create those multiple containers, right? I talked about the microservices implementation, where you have different chunks of software divided into different parts, and they're put in different containers. Let me just show you that diagram. Yeah. So over here you have 5 containers, right? So these 5 containers generally won't be alone. They will be inside of their own servers, their own dedicated servers. So you'll have containers, you have software within the container, which is within a server, right? And you can call that server as a node. So you have 5 nodes over here. How do you manage all of them? So to manage all of them, in managing, I mean like making sure that they're up and running. There is no issue. They can talk to each other. They have the latest updates and everything. To do that, we need something called an orchestration tool. So you need an orchestration tool to manage all of this. So in the industry, that's what it's called. These are called orchestration tools. You have a lot of different orchestration tools to do this. Now, even within Docker, you have a choice. There's something called Docker Swarm. Now, Docker Swarm allows us to manage all of these containers and handle them. Kubernetes is a similar service. Within Kubernetes, you don't have any container creation facilities. You use Docker containers. So you use Kubernetes and Docker together. You use Docker to create those containers, and you use Kubernetes to manage those containers. So all of these 5 services can also be handled by Kubernetes, where instead of launching, instead of using Docker Swarm, you're using Kubernetes to handle all of them. So I hope that made it a little bit more clear. Okay, Suryansh is asking, please tell us what is Docker again. So Suryansh, I can't go into detail, but I will tell you again. Docker is basically a tool that allows us to create containers. What do these containers do? These containers basically allow us to take all of the code, all of the libraries and the environment that is required for your software to get executed inside the container, so that all the different processes can occur, like testing process, building process, and then whatever you want to do, and then put it on the production environment and then deploy it, right? You can think of it as a VM. Think of it as a VM, but don't think that it is a VM, okay? And why do we need containers again? Consistent development environments and microservices. You keep different parts of software in containers and you manage them. Okay. No, Ricky, is like Docker Swarm and Kubernetes are competitors. Yes, they are competitors, but Kubernetes is way more popular. So the industry standard is generally you use Kubernetes with Docker, right? So let me just launch my t2.micro, free tier eligible. Alright guys, one more thing. If you want to get a more brief in detail idea about Docker, we have a Docker live session that I've taken before for this. And I went only talking about Docker, all the different Docker commands and everything, right? So I won't be covering everything in this session. So if you guys want, you can check out those live sessions. And the moderator will link that video where you guys can check it out, okay? Okay, so created my thing. Yeah, Shobs is right. We can run Docker on a local machine also. In fact, I do have Docker within this system. Is that I prefer Docker on Ubuntu Linux, right? It's much more fancy, and I can tell people that I'm a hacker. I can run in terminal and everything. Okay, jokes aside, you use Linux a lot, so it's good for practice also. You can have Docker running on your Windows system, but it's a little buggy on Windows system, so I prefer it on Linux. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install Docker on our Ubuntu system. First, I will go ahead and update this system. What is this PuTTY? Well, PuTTY is an SSH client. So we created that virtual machine over here, right? So when you want to access the virtual machine, how do you do that? Well, basically, you have to use a private key that they give you. You can either download it or choose an existing one and access your virtual machine. Now, there are two ways. There are a lot of ways. I used something called an SSH client. I launched it. I put in the IP address. I gave it the private key. And I launched my virtual machine. It basically allows me to open up a terminal very easily. You can do this on your own system also. You can go ahead and use PowerShell, and there is an SSH command that you can use with that. All right, it's not coming up. Yeah. So we have updated our instance. Now what we're going to do is we are going to be launching, we'll be basically be downloading and installing Docker. So the command for that is sudo apt install docker.io-y. So this will install Docker for us. Yes, Ravi, you can directly use the SSH also on your Linux. You don't have to do this. That's what I said when you open up PowerShell and do the SSH command. Yes, this is a Linux VM. This is in specific, this is the Ubuntu distro. All right, so we have Docker installed on this. Okay, to give you guys a taste of it, let me just show you one of the commands. Docker run. Okay, so this command will basically run Ubuntu containers for us. Right, okay. So this will allow us to run a Ubuntu container within the Ubuntu system. So you can see that it's taking the image for Ubuntu. And if you do a docker ps, sudo docker ps, you can see that there's a container being launched over here. All right. Now let's move on. Now a little behind because I want to tell you guys about a lot more. Like over here, you guys can see the Docker engine, right? So sorry, Docker environment. Yeah, let's go through the Docker environment. So there are a lot of different things within Docker. You have the Docker engine, which in basic is responsible for all the Docker's processes, like creating objects and creating and pushing and all building process and everything. You have Docker objects. These objects are basically your container, your images, your networks, your volumes, and everything. Registry, as the name suggests, it's a registry. You store images within registry. Now, what are images? You guys might be not knowing what images are. So I will explain what an image is, and then we'll talk about registry. And Docker Compose and Docker Swarm. So today we'll be talking about Docker Swarm also. Docker Swarm is important because this is what we'll be using today. Okay, we can ignore Docker Swarm for today. There's no need for that. So Docker Engine. Basically, guys, when you want to create objects, right, these objects can be your containers, your images, your networks, your volumes. All of that can be created using the Docker engine. Docker engine is basically what makes Docker run. Everything related to Docker is run with the help of Docker engine. Okay. Then we have Docker objects. So let me just show you guys all the different Docker objects like images, containers, volumes, networks, and Swarm nodes and services. Ignore the last one. We actually ignore the last one. We're going to be talking about only these four. Okay. So Docker images. So when I talk about creating containers, right? How do you create those containers? You create those containers with the help of images. So when I talk about sharing the containers, I don't exactly mean sharing the container itself. We share the image. Now, what is an image over here? Now, I know some of you may already know what an image is, but some of you don't know. So think of image as a blueprint where you set the configurations for your container, like what kind of environment do you want, what kind of software code do you want, what kind of tools you want. You specify that within an image. So when you, if you give an example, like when you're creating a house, to know how to design the house or make the house, you need to create a blueprint for that first, right? The blueprint will have all the dimensions, all the things that are required for you to know how to create the house. Similarly, images are something that contain all the information that is necessary for the Docker engine to understand how to create a container. So if you want to create a Linux container, you specify it in your image that I want to create an Ubuntu Linux container. That's exactly what I did over here. So when I did the Docker run -it command, okay, this is a little different. No, yeah, so that is a little different. We'll talk about images later. So if I do a sudo docker images, it will show me the list of images that I have within my system. These images basically are what define the containers. So Ubuntu image is the image that I pulled, and it will contain all the details that are required to launch your Ubuntu container. Yeah, I hope that is clear. So this container can only run by knowing what is there in the image. Okay, so that is clear. Now again, Docker registries are, one second. Yeah, Docker registry is a place where you store images. So if you want to share your images with someone, you store it in a Docker registry. Okay, so Docker architecture. So this will give you guys better understanding. Let me just show it. Yeah, so Docker CLI is basically all the commands we type in. Sudo docker images, docker ps, that is your CLI. So you type in commands like build, run, pull. So your build command basically allows you to create images of yourself. So if you tell build, it will tell daemon to build an image for you. If you want to build an Ubuntu image, you can build an Ubuntu image. Now the pull command basically allows your Docker daemon to know what image you want to pull. If you want to pull an Apache web server image, it will look for that in the Docker registry and it will pull it into the local system. Now Docker run command is something that we've already run. It basically references Ubuntu image or whatever image you specified and creates a container out of it. Okay, now I'm actually gonna skip this for today because we do not have time. All right, Docker Compose I want to explain. So for now, just understand Docker Compose is a service within Docker that lets us launch multiple containers at the same time. So this command that we use, right, sudo docker run command, this command allows us to run specific containers. But we can only run one container at a time with this. If you want to run multiple containers at a time, we need to make use of Docker Compose. So Docker Compose allows us to create multiple containers at the same time. Now, how does it do it? It does it by creating a small text file. So I will create a text file, and in this text file I will be mentioning all the details about my containers. If I want to launch 3 containers, I will mention them accordingly over here. Okay. All right, so today, since I see we do not have enough time for me to specifically write down the commands to launch a WordPress website, what I'm going to do is instead we are going to be just copying and pasting it. Just give me a second, guys. Yeah, can you guys see me now? All right, yeah, so we're back. So this is the installation process, guys. Let me just copy this and yeah. So the thing is, we need to install Docker Compose as a separate service. It is not within Docker. You need to install Docker Compose separately. So I have commands for that over here. So first we'll use the first command. It's a sudo curl command. It basically curls whatever we want over here. That is Docker Compose. It will curl it into our system and install it. Okay, so we have installed Docker Compose. We just need to give it some specific permissions. Let me do that. So that for that we're using the chmod command. All right. So now we just have to check the version of Docker Compose. Okay. So yeah, we have version. If you guys want this list of commands, you can always check out the Docker documentation. In the documentation, you'll find the exact same set of commands. That's where I got these commands. So they basically allow you to install Docker Compose. There are 3 steps: install Docker Compose, give it certain permissions, and check the version. You should see this. If you're not seeing this, that means Docker Compose is not installed for you. All right, so make sure that happens. Now we have Docker Compose installed, and we have a Docker Compose.yaml file, right? So this is how you use Docker Compose. You have to create a Docker Compose.yaml file. So these YAML file will contain all the configurations. So let me just go ahead and bring up the WordPress configurations directly. Now this configuration is also available online, that you guys can go ahead and get it. It's very simple. So today I'll just explain to you what's happening over here. So guys, this is how you write down your configurations. They happen in key value pairs over here. So first you're mentioning the version. So this is basically telling what kind of format you'll be using to write all of this. Okay, there are certain formats you can use, version 2 or 3, but those are older versions. We're using 3.3 over here. And within that, you have to mention services first. So services basically tell your Docker Compose what are the 2 different services. The services is basically same as containers, just with a different name. Now it has a little different meaning, but I don't want to get into that because I will confuse you. I'm 100% sure. Okay, so within services, we'll be launching 2 services. One is the DB and other is the WordPress. So this DB is basically the database. We'll be using MySQL database for this purpose of ours. So that's the image that we have referenced. So what happens is that we are mentioning we want the MySQL 5.7 image. So what Docker will do is it will look for this image in Docker registry. That is Docker Hub. It will look for this image. If it finds the image, it will download the image and will do all of the rest of the tasks using this image. What the next thing it does is it creates a volume for our DB. So over here, we can see the destination mention, sorry, the source mentioned for our volume. And this volume will basically allow us to store data. Now, with Docker containers, the thing is you can't store permanent data. Like if you store data within your container itself, it becomes less efficient. Now, why it becomes less efficient is again going to a little bit more detail. Just understand that if you can't write directly data into Docker containers, you need special storage types. One of the storage types is Docker volumes. So volumes basically allow you to store data permanently. So they are separate from your containers, but they can be attached. So this is what we're doing. We're basically making sure that a container is attached to our MySQL container. Then it gives the restart as always. So this container will restart always, and then we're giving it some environment variables. So these environment variables are very important to mention. Even when you're doing a manual installation of MySQL, you need to mention these details like MySQL root password, MySQL database, MySQL user, MySQL WordPress, MySQL password. So you're mentioning these password usernames to make sure that your MySQL is being provided with all of these details. It will not launch properly without any of these details. Okay, that is our one of the containers. That is DB container. Now let me come down and I will explain the WordPress container. So WordPress container has some special configurations. That is, first is the depends on configuration, right? So this depends on configuration basically says that the WordPress container will only be launched if the DB container is launched. So we've set a condition that if the DB container fails, then the WordPress container will not launch. So we've given it a dependency over here. Then comes the image. We specify the image we want. So for WordPress also there is an image available that you guys can pull on Docker Hub. So once you mention the image over here, Docker engine will basically look for this image within your within the Docker registry. If it finds the image, it will pull it and will start using it. And we are exposing it at the port 80. So we can basically access our WordPress at the default IP itself. I will show you guys what that means as restart is always, and we are going to be setting the environment variables again. WordPress DB host, so we're giving the port at which the DB is going to be available to the WordPress. So it's going to be available to the WordPress at the port 3306. So this is the container and this is the port at which it will be available or exposed. Then we're giving it the user, DB user, then DB password, WordPress, and the DB name, WordPress. All right. So you need to make sure that these details are same as up over here. MySQL database, my user, and password, right? So they're all WordPress. And again, we are defining the volume over here for our DB. Okay. So guys, these are the configurations. We have set the configurations. Well, we just pasted the configurations. And again, if you guys want the configurations, you can easily find it on the documentation as well. Okay, so let me just go ahead and save this file, enter, and we will exit out of here. And you guys can see my docker compose.yaml file is created. Now my next step is going to be basically building this docker compose.yaml file. So this is a different process than you're running your file. You need to type in docker -compose and up. So this will go through the file. It will scan through the file one by one. It will start doing all the processes that we have asked it to do. So let me just go ahead and press this. Right, so we need to run it as root, otherwise it won't run. I keep on forgetting that. Sudo docker compose up. And you guys can see first it created the network. We mentioned a network also, that is the default one. So we didn't mention, but created one by default. And then we have a volume, that is Ubuntu DB data, that we did ask it to create. And you can see that it's pulling the images. Over here right now it's pulling the WordPress image. That's the whole process going on. And once it pulls the WordPress image, it will create the WordPress container. Also guys, feel free to ask questions. We have 5 more minutes for the session. So I would like to know if you guys have any questions so far. All right, it seems that it has been completed. So let's go ahead and check it out. Let me just copy the IP address over here. Go ahead and paste this. First, we need to check if our container is running or not. I think there might be an issue. Let me just duplicate the session. Okay, so they are running fine. We just need to go to the port 8000. All right, so they're all running fine. As you guys can see over here, when I did a sudo docker ps, this command lists all your running containers. So this means none of the containers have been stopped. That means no issues. Hooray. So we have WordPress running up at port 8000 at localhost. So this is what I meant. So you have to go to the localhost 000 dot means localhost, and port 8000. Now I'm not going to localhost, so I put in the IP address because I'm not doing this from my own machine. I'm using AWS. So I'm using the IP address over here and I put it over here and gone to port 8000. Okay, so now you guys can see if you go to that port, it will start setting up the WordPress for you. Okay, so we'll just click on English, we'll continue. And you guys can see it was very simple, like if you know Docker, but I hope I made this process easy for you. So let me just show you guys the command again. Um, right. All right, so guys, this is basically what we did. We first installed Docker, that was using the command sudo apt install docker.io. Once we installed Docker, we installed Docker Compose service. Why did we install Docker Compose service? Because Docker Compose allows us to basically launch multiple containers at the same time and configure them also. To do that, we need to install Docker Compose. Then we need to create the Docker Compose.yaml file, and we need to put in the specific settings. If you guys want these configurations, you can find them on the documentation. I explained to you what this configurations do. They basically allow you to create two containers over here, one for DB, one for WordPress, and they will be connected to each other as we have mentioned over here in the WordPress environment. WordPress DB host, the DB is at the port 3306, so it can access it through there. Okay, so we created our two containers. How did we do that? We basically we built the compose file using the docker compose up command. Now, if you guys want to shut down a service, you can do docker compose down also. It will remove everything, so it will stop working. But we don't want to do that, so I'll just leave it be. So that was the process of launching the WordPress. You don't have to do anything extra. Now, what is the advantage of doing with Docker? With Docker, the thing is, you can launch multiple containers. So if I do a docker ps over here, sudo docker ps, now you guys can see that we have only two containers for these two services. So what if I wanted more WordPress containers? Now why will I want more WordPress containers? You might be questioning. This is a good question. The thing is, we need sometimes replicas of containers. Replicas, as the name suggests, they're copies. So you can have copies of WordPress containers. These copies will basically allow you to increase your availability. Availability is, making sure your application is always running. So if you have three WordPress containers which are copies of each other, they're all pointing into one direction. If one of the containers fails, then you have the other two containers still up and running. But with this, right, if I just fail WordPress over here, I don't have any more WordPress over here. Only one container. If it fails, then I don't have my WordPress website available to me anymore. So that's why we launch replicas for them. So those replicas, right, so they basically help us to make sure that our product is available. So that way you guys can see how it is useful over here. You can even launch these WordPress replicas on different servers. I can go ahead and launch multiple servers over here, not just this one VM. We can have 3-4 VMs and we can have multiple replicas of our VMs on that. Okay, WordPress on that. And one more thing that it helps us to do, actually there are a lot more things. You can orchestrate it using one of the Kubernetes, or you can orchestrate it using Docker Swarm. So when you orchestrate it, you have options such as scaling. You can go ahead and scale your WordPress to have many more replicas if you want. Or if you want to update it, you can update it very easily. There are specific commands for it where you can update your WordPress image directly. And if you want to update your MySQL, you can do that very easily also. So that also is a big advantage without having to put anything down. You don't have to put anything down like for maintenance any purpose. You can just do it directly. So that is a big advantage. So let's come back over here. So site title, what is the site title I should give, guys? I will give it great learning. It makes it easy. Username is going to be admin. Our password is going to be admin. This is just for, our playing purposes. Confirm use of weak password. They make you accept it. And I'm going to just give it some random Gmail and we're going to install WordPress. Okay, we'll log in. Let's do that. Did I back to demo? Let's do this again. Well, I guess we've set it up anyway, so that's the whole point. We don't really need to care about what the admin thing is. So you guys can see this is our setup WordPress website. Now, if you guys want, you can go ahead and access this also right now, because I've made my public IP available. So if you guys can, go to 3.137.210.27 at port 8000, you can access the website. Okay, do you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. We have 5 more minutes, so I'll answer them. So guys, this was the end part of the session. Now I'll be taking questions from you guys. I'll just read the older ones. We have Shobs asking Monday at what time is the session on Docker? So Shobs, the thing is, we don't exactly have sessions assigned for Docker yet, more sessions. But if you want, actually, yes, we do have one more session. You can just go to Great Learning Academy and click on View All Live Sessions, and you can see all the different live sessions we have. So on Monday, October 5th, we have another session by me, that is Ram, Introduction to Docker. So if you guys want, you can go ahead and register now, and you can watch that session from here. Yes, it is by me only. So if you want to hear it by me. So NJ Gossip's asking, I prefer that there should be a course on coding basics. We do have a lot of courses on coding. Now, specifically, if you want C++ or C, you can just go to YouTube and type in Great Learning and whatever language you want to learn with. Let's say you want to learn with Python. Now, my bias is with Python. That's why I like Python. We have a very good course by Bernie. You guys can go ahead and check it out. It's a 4-hour course that will give you details about it. So Shobs is asking, do you have one on Unix as well? We do not have a course on Unix as far as I know, but the moderator will clear that out for you. So Avinash is asking a question. How can we get the password of MySQL when it gets pulled through Docker compose file? So you are defining those passwords, dude. You are doing it yourself. So when you create that Docker compose file, right? So you have defined the MySQL root password over here. That is some WordPress, okay? And these are the passwords that that WordPress needs to access, right? All those things. Uh, okay, so Bunny is asking, how much time does it take you to be an expert in Docker? So I've been working on Docker for like more than 2 years now. So I mean, if you want to be an expert, you can be an expert in 6 months, dude. If you are working solely on Docker, you can get that. But the thing is, if you want a job, you shouldn't really rely on Docker. I would recommend doing Docker as a side thing. It's a skill that you have, but it's not your primary skill, because it's tougher to get a job only with Docker, because Docker is associated with a lot of different things, right? So you need to know all of those different things. You can either go with DevOps or go with software development. That will be better for you. And just put Docker as a side skill that you have. Do you have a course on web development? We do have a course on web development. The moderator will let you know about the exact session, but I will just show you guys where you can check out this thing. Just head to greatlearning.in/academy or type in Google Great Learning Academy, and over there you guys can go to IT and software, and you have a lot of different web development courses. So the one I would recommend is full stack development. It is basically your web development, but it tells you about all the full stack technologies that are being used with it. Okay. Or if you want to learn separately, we have courses on data structures and algorithm. And on YouTube, if you want a tutorial, we have tutorial for that also. Again, somebody asked for CSS course. We have a course in CSS also. They're all free, guys, so feel free to check them out. How can we use Docker for development environment? So Ravi, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. So in development environment, right? So basically what you do is you first develop your code. You first decide your requirements, like what kind of code is it going, what kind of software is it going to be in the end, and what kind of things do you need. Is it Django? Is it going to be backend? So what kind of backend is it going to be? Is it Python framework, Django that you're using? Okay, fine, you're using that. What are the tools that are required for you to execute it? What is the environment exactly you need to execute it? All of those things will be decided by you as a developer, and you will give those requirements to whoever is creating those containers. Or maybe if you are working as the part-time also, you can create your container itself. So when you're creating, not container, your image, so you decide what kind of image will be created. So when you want to create an image, you first need to create a text file called Docker file. Within this file, you mention all of your details. Like as I've mentioned in my session before, you can type in from, and whatever image you want to reference, you type that image. Whatever code you want to copy. Let's say you have a lot of code that you want to copy from your system. So let's say I have main dot slash main dot py. This is my code, and I want it to copy to slash apps. Okay, so this is what I will do. I will copy it, and then I will run whatever command I want to run my system. And this is my file, Docker file. Now, once I build this Docker file, I will create my image. So that's how you create images. You write in whatever instructions you want for your image, and you build that file. Okay. So I hope that was clear for you. If not, that's all right. We're going to have another session on Docker on Monday. You can go ahead and check that session out. Or we're going to be releasing a tutorial, a 5-hour or a 6-hour tutorial. You guys can check that out also. Okay, guys, so that was it for this session. I really hope you guys enjoyed and took something out of it. But that's it for today. My name is Ram again, and I'll see you guys in the next live session. Thank you so much for watching.